Hi all, let's have a look at another interesting game from the Boleslavsky Bronstein match of 1950. So this was to decide the challenger to Mikhail Botvinnik. They were very good friends though, bear this in mind. And they were also keen to play very exciting chess generally. A quotation from Bronstein of his approach to the game. He says, "When I play chess, I always try to vary my openings as much as possible, to invent new plans in attack and defense, to make experimental moves which are dangerous and exciting. I believe my greatest quality in the chess world is that I have never played routine games." Now, Boleslavsky also has a quotation. "In playing, I do not strive for victory for the sake of points, and consider that the only win of a consistently played game could give real satisfaction. The game of chess is a struggle, but in the first place a struggle of ideas, and therefore the winner, if he wants to prove the value of his victory, ought to prove the correctness of his ideas." So, but both of these players are very much what I call real chess enthusiasts. And if you look at this game, it's very, very interesting, the openings. The opening in particular of this game. It's a repeat actually of game 12 earlier in the match, which was a draw. But okay, so e4 from Boleslavsky, e6, we go into a French defense, and after bishop b4 we have this bishop d2 line. So this is sometimes known as the finger slip variation, bishop d2. Now here Bronstein, he varied what he did now as black. He took on e4 here, and of course this allows the sharp queen g4, so black has neglected that g7 pawn, and this seemingly gives white what he wants in this rather peculiar variation, which is potentially a strong initiative. And it seems quite dangerous to grab this pawn, but that's exactly what David Bronstein did. Now after castling queenside, there's an immediate threat. I wonder if you can see it if I give you 5 seconds. If white had another move, it would be like all over, because what could white play here? Yeah, bishop g5. I hope you've seen bishop g5. This, for example, here, bishop g5, hitting the queen and looking at d8. So black counterattack the queen here. We have queen takes g7. Rook g8, and the queen goes to h6. Now quite often in this position rook g6 has been played, but this is actually quite promising for white. If rook g6 is played, queen h4, white has some key resources here, not just bishop g5 but also the possibility of knight f3 if black's not careful. So this is actually quite tricky for black, and black could of course try and repeat, but Bronstein had a different idea here. Maybe this was prepared. He retracted the bishop to f8 here. So now after queen h6, rook g4, he's pushing the queen to a very unfortunate square. Queen h3, potentially it's unfortunate, it's on the same line as that bishop. And now again bishop g5 is in the air here. Even if queen e5, there's bishop takes f6 and queen takes g4. So that would be dangerous for black. So the queen gets out of the way. Queen takes f2. So does white have much of an initiative here? It looks as though this is a little bit of an unsound gambit at the moment. Knight b5. Okay, c7 has to be addressed. Knight a6. Now king b1. And black can just get on with things with bishop d7, it seems. Bishop e3, the queen goes to f5. Some harassment, knight d4, but the queen steps back to g6. So what is white showing for the gambit here? It doesn't seem too much. We have knight b3, now knight b4, and this is actually a very, very tricky position. The knight on b4 now can come to d5. Potentially to take on e3, and then maybe even bishop h6 later. So it's actually really quite tricky, this position. What is white doing here? His bishop's like protecting g2. It seems a passive position. Knight e2, and now that knight comes to d5. And if white played, say, this kicking move c4, he didn't do this. He played knight c3, which looks bad for the structure of the pawns. But if he plays this, black can just take here and bishop h6. And all of a sudden, this knight is justified on b4 because there's this horrible check. And that's just really a disaster. This would be a total disaster. Ouch, for example. So white has to tread quite carefully here. Knight c3 trying to take away some of the pressure at the expense of some structure. Knight d5. Okay, threatening that pawn and the bishop. But if bishop d2, e3 could be very useful. That's already looking terrible for white, this position. Bishop d4 was played. Now rook g5. And this has a terrible threat to it. Rook g5. If white does a routine move, then rook h5. And where is the queen going? If queen g3, we just take this and we win a whole rook. So white has to address this terrible threat of rook h5. Plays g4. Of course, that's another target. e5. Hitting the bishop, hitting the pawn even more. Bishop drops back. Bishop takes g4. White's in a desperate situation, and desperate situations require for desperate measures here. But this is looking absolutely terrible. He has to basically sacrifice his queen now for just 2 pieces. It's over, really. It's in effect over. Bronstein's preparation has completely kind of refuted white's system here, the finger slip variation. This is not the greatest advert for it. This actually constitutes quite a strong refutation, this whole idea. But anyway, the game continues a little bit longer. Rook d8, exchange of rooks, check. Bishop e3. Bronstein just advanced his pawns. He doesn't mind about losing the exchange here. These pawns are all coming down like space invaders. f4, check. Bishop takes a7, well, and now black's winning even more material after rook h5, undermining the knight. Yeah, a disastrous opening for white, but perhaps you could argue it was great preparation of David Bronstein to actually come up with this daring approach of the bishop going back to f8 and later moves. Did seem to refute the whole system here of this finger slip variation. So I hope you got something from that. And comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.